Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're going to be checking out a brand new meta in Pokemon Go Battle League, and that is the Ultra League Fantasy Cup. This is a 2500 CP meta where only Dragon types, Steel types, and Fairy types are allowed, and in this meta, I believe that Lucario is the absolute best closer. Lucario is extremely classy, but with counter, power-up punch, and Shadow Ball, it can be a devastating closer in the endgame. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out Lucario in action in the Fantasy Cup. Hopping to the first match, picking up a great lead Tapu Fini into Steelix. Honestly, my entire team does exceedingly well versus Steelix. Opponent is going to save switch into Giratina, and I'm going to stay in with Tapu Fini to start. I'm going to tank whatever they throw here, build all the way up to the Moonblast, and I decide to go for a bait. I'm hoping to try and save some energy for later, so I'm going to go for a bait. It's a bit risky here, but they commit the shield, and now I'm going to send in my Registeel. Registeel, of course, this is going to be firing off exclusively resisted damage onto the Giratina, but XL Registeel is so tanky that even just throwing resisted damage, it can honestly hang very nicely with the Giratina. I fire off the Zap Cannon, and I get the attack drop first try. That is incredibly helpful. Giratina firing off Shadow Sneak after Shadow Sneak, but it already didn't do a lot of damage, and now it's doing even less thanks to that attack drop. They go for another Shadow Sneak. Registeel still hanging in there, able to make it to yet another Zap Cannon. This Zap Cannon is going to get that Giratina into the red and get another attack debuff. The one unfortunate thing is that I'm not going to be able to lock on down here. Lock on does not do a lot of damage to the Giratina, so I'm going to be forced to fire off the Focus Blast. Focus Blast is double resisted, but it is enough to KO. Back in comes Steelix. Steelix farming up energy. Registeel makes it to the Focus Blast. I'm just hoping that this is not a crunch. It is a crunch, and I get KO'd. I send in Lucario in the back. My opponent has their own Tapu Fini, but I do have a shield advantage. So basically, all I have to do is just grab that final shield, and the game should be over. Moonblast gets the shield, and I can just save 2 shields for Lucario. Lucario may be a fighting type, but Lucario is going to be able to take down this fairy type and then clean up the Steelix in the back. In comes Lucario, farming up to the Shadow Ball. Opponent will fire off a Surf and grab a shield. Lucario, I'm saving shields most games for Lucario because, as I mentioned, it's glassy, but it can output a tremendous amount of damage. Shadow Ball KOs the Fini. In comes the Steelix. Steelix farming up energy. Lucario firing off the power-up punch. This power-up punch boosting up Lucario's attack more and more. They're going to fire off a Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs is going to get shielded by Lucario. Lucario makes it to power-up punch number 2. This is going to be taking care of the Steelix. And that is a good game. Moving into the next match, picking up a very positive lead, Tapu Fini into Solgaleo. Solgaleo does run Fire Spin as its fast move, so considering I have 2 Steel types in the back, I am pretty happy to catch it on the lead here with my Water type in Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini gonna fire off a Surf, and Solgaleo is gonna let that through. I'm not really gonna be shielding here in case they go for a Psychic Fangs, and they do go for the Psychic Fangs. I continue to farm up. Solgaleo firing off another charge move. Solgaleo goes for the Psychic Fangs. I'm now double debuffed, so I am gonna fire off the Surf just to get rid of Solgaleo and see what they have in the back. Surf is going to KO. Opponent sends in Florges. I'm going to pivot into Registeel to check and see if they have a good response to a Steel type in the back, and they definitely do not, as Steelix is by no means a good response to Registeel. Even if they Earthquake, Earthquake does not one-shot an XL Registeel. They just continue to farm up. I make it to Focus Blast number 2, and I grab a shield from my opponent. Registeel continuing to farm. Steelix firing off a charge move. I'm going to let this go. They go for the Psychic Fangs, and that is incredibly nice to no shield. I make it to yet another Focus Blast, putting so much pressure on the Steelix. Steelix gives up the final shield, and shield advantage Lucario basically just doesn't lose in this meta. I'm aggressively switching into Lucario, and it's a simultaneous switch. Lucario into Florges. Florges fires off a move. I decide to call a bait here. I would not recommend that. Please shield your Lucario. As you saw, Disarming Voice did so much damage. If they Moonblasted there, I just lost. So definitely use your shields on Lucario. It's very frail, but as you're going to see, that Shadow Ball hits very hard on Florges. Florges firing off another Disarming Voice, but it's not going to matter. It's too little too late. Lucario gets the farm down. Here, Honestly, I forgot what their final Pokemon was. I should have thrown one in the move, but I just went for the Power Up Punch right away. Either way, Lucario gets the farm down, and that's game over. Picking up a very nice lead in the next match, Tapu Fini into Escavalier. Opponent is staying in this matchup, and that works out very nicely for me. Something I was noticing day one as well is that Tapu Fini appears to be a very solid pick for this meta, as it can do quite well versus a lot of things. One thing it cannot do well against, however, is Ferrothorn, but the good news is, since they save switched it, I can just respond with my Registeel, and they are in an absolutely miserable matchup. Registeel going for the Focus Blast right off the bat. This will not one-shot, but it will deal a massive amount of damage to the Ferrothorn, and honestly, I'm just gonna lock on farm them down. I don't really care what they throw. They go for the Flash Cannon. They can throw whatever resistant damage they want to. I'm going to lock on farm all the way down and leave with energy to throw at the Escav if that's what they decide to bring back in. Power Whip is going to land. Ferrothorn gets farmed down. Registeel is going to be met with Lucario, and Lucario will be met with the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon gets the shield aggressive switch into Tapu Fini, and I am not baiting, going straight for the Moonblast here. Moonblast, big damage onto Lucario. Opponent sends back in Escavalier. Escavalier met with the Surf from the Tapu Fini. This Surf is going to hurt. Escav burns the final shield, and from here, again, I have a shield advantage. I can save my shields for Lucario. Shield advantage Lucario is an absolute nightmare in this cup. Lucario gets the farm down. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We've got a very cool lead in the next match, Tapu Fini versus Jirachi. Jirachi, of course, does have Doom Desire, so I'm going to farm up, switch, and then catch the Doom Desire onto Registeel, where it is going to be resisted. My opponent is now going to send in their own Lucario. My opponent farming up here, and they are going to fire off a charge move. I'm going to let this go. Opponent is running close combat on Lucario, the nuke moveset, and unfortunately, down goes Registeel. The good news is that they are now double debuffed due to the close combat, so I can fire off my Surf, and it's easily going to KO. My opponent commits the shield. They are trying to protect Lucario, and I am not going to let that happen. Going for Surf number 2. Opponent gives me both shields. That is honestly massive. Decision time here. I elect to shield. They go for another close combat. I aggressive switch into my Lucario, and my opponent is going to send in their Jirachi. These neutral confusions are hurting. I believe I should be able to go for a power-up punch and a farm down. My thinking is that since I don't have shields, I need to leave with energy, and I need to leave boosted. So I am barely going to be able to get the farm down. We'll have to see. Opponent sends in their own Lucario. I'm firing off the power-up punch, needing this to KO. Power-up punch, KOs in the back. They have an Iron Tail Steelix, gotta love early ranks, and they concede the match. Great lead in the next match as we lead Tapu Fini into another Escavalier. This Escav is staying in, which is great news for me considering I have 2 steel types in the back. They're going to fire off the drill run. Even though my IVs aren't the best, I'm still able to tank 2 drill runs plus the counters. Opponent going to send in Sylveon, and I have a great answer for it in Registeel. Registeel farming up and going to fire off the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon will do quite a bit of damage and lower their attack. You absolutely love to see it. Sylveon can only hit for resisted damage here. They fire off a Draining Kiss. Again, early ranks, you're going to see some interesting movesets. I'm going to go for an undercharged Focus Blast here and then attempt to lock on farm down. Focus Blast, I'm probably going to hit a couple more bubbles there, but either way, we should be in a pretty nice spot. I'm looking for the farm down. They're able to reach another charge move here. Sylveon goes for another Draining Kiss. Opponent now going to switch back into Escavalier, and I'm firing off this Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon gets the shield. I switch back into the Tapu Fini. Let's put pressure on the Escav. This Surf is going to get the final shield. Tapu Fini makes it to yet another Surf, and this will be getting the Escav low. Escav very low, able to reach a last second move, and you know what? As always, we have 2 shields. I'm just giving 2 shields to Lucario. 2 shielded Lucario just absolutely destroys. Sylveon gets farmed down in the back. It's Giratina. Giratina looks like they may be running Dragon Claw and Ancient Power, judging by the fact that that is a CMP tied to the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is going to be resisted, so that's just not going to be cutting it versus Lucario. They actually undercharge it there, and they resign the match. Tough lead in the next match, Tapu Fini into Empoleon. I have two better responses in the back, but I'm going to stay in here and farm up some energy and look to catch. So I farm up, switch, and catch the Drill Peck onto Registeel. Let's go. That is going to be resistant. Opponent is going to answer with Escavalier. Escav farming up. Escav will be able to outpace and make it to the Drill Run. I will immediately no shield here. Drill Run will do quite a bit of damage, but that's not something I'm willing to shield. I'm going to return fire with the Zap Cannon, putting pressure on the Escav. Escav commits the shield. We do not get an attack drop, and unfortunately, I fall just short of making it to a Focus Blast. That's a bit rough, but the good news is I saved a bunch of energy on Tapu Fini. I'm going to fire off this Surf. Surf is going to land, getting them below half health. They're going to fire off a move. I'm going to let this go. I tank the Drill Run, but they're actually going for an Acid Spray instead. And now, since they've lowered my defense, that Drill Run would do quite a bit of damage, so I will commit the shield. I'm going to commit the shield, look for the Water Gun, farm down, and get it. That is big. In comes Empoleon. I bring in Lucario. In the back, they have Shadow Granbull, and I will be able to make it to a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball will obviously KO if they let it through. Opponent commits the shield, and here I'm going to make a critical mistake. I go for the Surf. I was hoping that Surf was going to be enough to KO, but this is an Ultra League Shadow Granbull. It is barely able to hang on and make it to the move, and unfortunately that decision, it looks like it's going to cost me the game. I do get the farm down, but Empoleon is not in Moonblast range. I can fire off the Moonblast. This will get Empoleon into the red, but Empoleon able to hang on and get the win. Moving into the next match, we lead Tapu Fini into yet another Escavalier. As I mentioned, there were a ton of Escavalier leads, so it was definitely a fantastic time leading Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini is going to be met with the Drill Run. Drill Run, not going to do a lot of damage, so I am going to let that through. Opponent going to save switch into Empoleon, and I'm going to respond with Registeel. Registeel doesn't have the shield in this matchup, so that's why I brought it in as opposed to bringing in that Lucario. I'm going to farm up, fire off the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon, of course, will deal a massive amount of damage, but I actually decide to go for an undercharge because I actually don't want to give the Escav a lot of farm. Instead, I'd rather go for the undercharge and the farm down. Hydro Cannon lands, Registeel looking for the farm down on the Empoleon, and I leave with a sliver of HP and a charge move loaded, so that ended up working out perfectly. Zap Cannon gets the shield, and they get basically no farm from the Reggie. I can send back in the Tapu and begin the onslaught of charge moves. Surf onto the Escav is going to grab the final shield. Tapu Fini makes it to another Surf, and this will be getting them low. And as before, that we've seen quite a few times, if you give Lucario a shield advantage, it will absolutely crush. They actually go for the Acid Spray, and they send in Primarina. These charms are hurting, but Lucario still able to withstand the charms, despite the defense debuff, make it to the Shadow Ball, and get the Primarina into farm down range. Tapu Fini, Water Guns down, in comes the Escav, it gets Water Gun down as well, and that's game over. Great lead in the final match, Tapu Fini into Dragonite. Opponent save switches into Escavalier, and they are core broken by Tapu Fini. With two steel types in the back, I'm more than happy to stay in here and play out this matchup with the Escav, because this is a fairly dominant matchup for the Fini. They're going to fire off a Drill Run. We've seen before, we tank two Drill Runs and the counters, meaning that if they want to win this matchup, they're going to have to give up both shields. They're going to be firing off a move here. Drill Run, not going to KO. I make it to another Surf, and they have to shield this if they want to take switch advantage. Surf is able to land. I Water Gun down, and I'm looking to pivot. In comes Dragonite, and I pivot into the Registeel. Dragonite farming up a ton of energy, but they are not going to fire off a move before I go for my Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon lands, gets the attack drop. In the back, they have their own Registeel, and at this point, this game is done. I just saved two shields for Lucario, and Lucario can Power Up Punch through whatever is left on that Registeel, and honestly, Power Up Punch through that Dragonite as well. Dragonite took a Zap Cannon. It does not have a lot of HP remaining. With the energy lead, my Registeel will outpace, make it to the Focus Blast, and this Focus Blast, are they going to expend their final shield here? They are not. I just send in Lucario. Lucario can just go straight Power Up Punch versus the Flying type. And again, Lucario with shield advantage, proving to be extremely deadly. They have so much energy on the Dragonite, but I have two shields. It's not going to matter. They bait with the Dragon Claw. This is a superpower. That's totally fine. I can just double shield, counter all the way down, and secure the win. All in all, I do think that Lucario is an incredibly effective pick for the Ultra Fantasy Cup, especially as a closer. If you want, you can also consider running Close Combat instead of Power Up Punch. I opted for Power Up Punch as it is the more consistent moveset, and in shielded situations, boosted counters can absolutely shred through opponents, but in a shields down scenario, having the finishing power of Close Combat can be quite deadly as well. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.